For our final video, we'll be diving into game design. Wait a second, that's not art. I thought this was an all art series. Are we not doing art for this one? Okay, it turns out having a little bit of knowledge about the basics of game design is critical to any artist who wants to be involved in making games. It almost seems like we should have released this video first. Can we still do that? No? Well, shit. All right, let's start at the very beginning. What is a game? It may seem like an easy question to answer, but a game can refer to so many different things. I mean, we use the word game to refer to anything from tennis to Monopoly to football to World of Warcraft to Dungeons and Dragons or even that hoop stick thing. What do all these activities have in common that make them games?
A game generally has 4 basic components. A goal, some objective that needs to be completed. Opposition, something that has to be overcome to complete that objective. Decisions, or ways to surpass the opposition. And rules, a framework around all this stuff that governs the whole experience.
This definition tells us that tennis is a game. And it tells us that eating cereal is not. Although, if we add some rules in opposition... in any case, it's not like we just want to make something that's technically a game. We want to make a fun game. So, how do you make something fun?
Fun is a tough subject, and it's not actually a very useful concept. We tend to set more specific goals for the game experience because there are many types of fun.
Examples of types of fun could be things like living out an alternate fantasy, experiencing a thrill or sensation, fellowship and camaraderie, mastering a challenge or skill, exploring the vast unknown, creativity and expression, and many, many more. But why is it so important to pick a specific type of fun?
The reason it's important to establish a specific experience is if you just say fun, it's incredibly subjective. The game might have conflicting types of fun, depending on who's working on it. For example, some games have an amazing narrative, the core of their experience, but adding unnecessary story elements to a game like League probably wouldn't make it more engaging for a vast majority of players.
What the? No. Go. Come on. Oh my God.
The other reason to create a target experience is so art and design are aiming in the same direction. It can be tempting to think of art as downstream of game design. You might think game designers come up with all the rules and mechanics, and the artists just make it look pretty. But in practice, that doesn't work very well. They're both interdependent components of a game. Often the best results come when art, design, and engineering are all pushing the game toward the same target and setting each other up for easy wins.
We've talked a lot in this series about how art can affect the gameplay of a game. But what do game designers do that affect the thematic and the tone of the game?
Game designers design mechanics, which are the various rules and interactions in a game. Mechanics have a vast impact on a game's thematic feel. Even without any art, mechanics alone can set a tone. For example, if we place a cube on a grid, there's nothing visual to tell us what the cube is or how we should feel about it. But if we have the cube deal damage in an area around itself and then disappear, we can imply that the cube is a bomb. And if we increase the damage area, we can enhance the player's feeling of danger and power. Through mechanics alone, we can turn an innocent cube into a scary explosive. We can also give the cube a sense of personality or character by defining movement patterns. Let's look at some examples of thematics derived from enemy movement patterns. Here's some basic forward movement. If we add a jump, it could be a frog. How might a ninja move in this game? Or a zombie? A robot might move like this. And a snake might move like this.
How about a tornado?
Justice!
Oh.
Together, artists and designers help ensure that the mechanics of the game are implying the right thematics, and vice versa. If the art or the mechanics aren't supporting the same theme, you'd be surprised how unnatural it can feel when you're playing. Consider bushes or leaves that stop bullets, or mailboxes that can stop a speeding truck. And my personal favorite, open doorways that you can't walk through.
Hey!
Yeah, and another example is the original Shen from League of Legends, designed to be a tank by the game designers and a stealth assassin by the artists. Every game has a goal or goals that you progress toward as you play. What are some things you need to keep in mind when you're creating a goal for a game?
Remember, when making a goal, you want to make it clear to the players how they're progressing towards those goals. If the player doesn't know exactly how they're progressing, they'll never know if they're actually doing well or if they're not doing well in terms of reaching that goal. If you look at a game like Overwatch, if I'm playing Payload, I know that I'm getting close to my goal whenever I reach a checkpoint. So I might hit the midway checkpoint of the map and we'd be like, great, we only have half more of the map to go. But it also is an indicator for the enemy team to know, like, hey, they're halfway, we really need to push hard in order to swing them back so we can take the advantage of the game.
That makes sense, because if a player can't measure their progress toward a goal, that would be like playing a racing game without knowing what lap you're on or what position you're in. You'd have no idea how well you're doing. Is there anything else we should know about goals?
Last thing to consider when thinking about a goal is making sure that you have climatic arcs building towards the actual goal's resolution. You want to make sure that there's enough difficulty and dramatic tension for all the players to feel it when they actually play. In terms of a boss fight, hey, when the boss gets to low health, he needs to bring in the heat, and I should be feeling that heat. Then if you're talking about a multiplayer game, take for instance a shooter, when we're on the verge of getting the last kill, the other team should really be feeling like they're against the wall and going, and we should be feeling the hunt of trying to take that last person out.
There's obviously a lot more to game design than could be covered in one video. But if there's one thing you should definitely learn, it's how to create good opposition. Opposition refers to the obstacles and challenges that a player has to overcome to win a game. Opposition is often what makes a game fun, but it also can make a game very frustrating. And you never want to frustrate a player, right?
Actually, it's not bad to create some frustration. Our job as developers is to create a challenge for players, and challenges can frankly be frustrating. Some of my favorite games of all time are really frustrating, but it has to be the right kind of frustration. It's the job of the game designer to provide both the opposition for the player and the tools to help them overcome that opposition. You're ultimately working both for and against the player at the same time.
Both for and against the player? So you like frustrating games?
I'll give a personal example from my childhood in which I was playing Ninja Gaiden. There was a particular boss I couldn't beat, which was Bloody Moth. You will never get past me. He would beat me over and over again, to the point my little brothers would mock me. You lost, you will never get past me. All I could do was think about this boss. Bloody Moth, I gotta beat him. And also get my brothers to shut up. Finally, one day, I didn't care about getting hit, would just go and just hit him. Both of our health bars are going down. I slashed him at the very last second. He dies. Controller went flying to the wall. I won. Unfortunately, I broke my controller. Parents got pissed, took my Nintendo.
I guess there are a lot of games I love, but are also really frustrating. League of Legends. But what's the difference between good and bad frustration? And how do you make sure you only have the good kind?
Establishing clear expectations and remaining consistent in design helps make the game feel fair. Fairness can be thought of separately from difficulty. A very difficult game can feel frustrating, but that's also why it feels so satisfying to win. When a game does things that are inconsistent or unpredictable, it can start to feel unfair. Players aren't able to learn from their failures. There are a lot of Mario Maker levels like this. Players overcome one obstacle only to be blindsided by the next. This can be funny to watch, but it's generally a bad idea when making most games, and the novelty wears off pretty quickly.
Luck and skill are two factors that play a huge role in how to create opposition. On one extreme, something like Candyland is entirely based on luck. It's all basically the roll of the die that determines the winner. But it works because it's a game that's not meant to require a huge amount of skill. On the other end of the spectrum, you have these hyper-competitive games like Counter-Strike, League of Legends, or Street Fighter, where there's very little left up to random chance, and the outcome of the match is almost entirely determined by the skills and abilities of the player.
So are games all either luck-based or skill-based? Or are there examples of games where they mix these two things together?
Battle Royale games like PUBG and Fortnite are really awesome examples of a successful mixture of these two elements. In these games, your starting location, items, and loot are essentially random, so you can get lucky or really unlucky at the start of the game with what you end up finding. But the moment-to-moment action relies really heavily on skill, so someone who's really good at the game can make a comeback even from a really poor start. And also someone who's less skillful can still have really exciting games or even win if they get enough of a lucky boost from the beginning.
Yay, like me! There is so much more to game design than we were able to cover in this video. But if you're interested in learning more about game design, get out there and research it, play some games, and maybe even make some. Alright, let's quickly look over the topics we've covered. And now, let's get some advice from the game designers.
Go out, grab some paper, some pencils, maybe some blank cards, and start making or adding to a game that you love. Start building something, finding the fun and the things that are exciting for you in the simplest ways possible. And play it with someone and find out if they liked it. Just start finding the fun.
One misconception I had about game design when I started was this idea that the best designers are the ones that always have the best ideas. And that is just simply not true. As a game designer, your job is to look at all the information you have available and sort of pick out the best solution and approach to a given problem. When working on League of Legends, I can actually point back to most of the champions I've worked on and can actually point out to almost every single ability and every single idea on the kit actually came from somebody else originally. My job was mostly to sort of curate and get those ideas together into something that was really cohesive and a good playing experience.
Some advice I wish I had gotten when I was a young designer is to make sure I'm separating out the difference between the goals or what I'm trying to achieve, the experience I want the player to have, and the individual tactics, the choices, the rules, the decisions that I'm focusing on in order to deliver on those goals. That's really important too when you're working with other people. Make sure when you're debating different ideas, are you talking about what you want the player to feel and do? Or are you talking about how we're going to achieve that?
Game development is challenging, and it can take time to hone your skills. One thing to keep in mind when you're starting out is that when you're looking at all of the great games and content out there today, these are the products of really experienced people in the field who have been honing their skills for a long time. When you start out, however, don't expect to be at that same level. Give yourself time to grow and develop your own skills in the field. So the first time that you make something and you put all of your heart and soul and love and attention into it, and it comes out maybe not at the level you were hoping, don't beat yourself up. This is your first step toward your career in game development. This is your first step in starting to develop those skills and learn what works in a game, what doesn't work in a game, etc. And you want to keep making games. Don't just make one game, make tons of games. Keep making games.
Something that I actually personally struggle with from time to time is actually having imposter syndrome, thinking that because I've gone to a new place that's actually of elevated status, that I'm not good enough to be there. And that's not true. The day in which you actually go to an interview and a person says, hey, you got the job, you've already proven in some terms that you can do the job to them. Now just make sure that in yourself and in your heart, you know that you can actually do that job. Go in there, get it done, and be the best person that you can actually be. You can never get past me.
Hey, you just finished the last video in So You Want to Make Games. We hope you've enjoyed diving into this series, but we also know that the games industry can feel a bit daunting at times. It's a huge business with tons of people, and it can be hard to imagine yourself making a difference. But it is also a very new industry, one that is still taking shape and evolving. This is the time for curious minds to come together, to innovate, and completely change how we think about game development. Personally, I have no idea what kind of game I'll be playing in 10 years, but it would be pretty awesome if it was one that you made. All right, let's get to work.